Hey everyone, thank you in advance for checking out my video. I appreciate it. For this assignment, I watched a webinar called Focusing on Using Mixed Methods, a discussion with experts. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to interview anyone for this, but I watched a lot of videos finding one that I thought would be, appropriate for a discussion, and this one was really good. So I'm excited to kind of talk about it. It's hosted by the National Center for Education Evaluation, and it just brought together a panel of researchers who typically use mixed methods research in like real world settings. So I'll definitely in my submission kind of drop a link to the video because I learned a lot watching it, so it might be helpful for some of my classmates. But one of the key takeaways from the video was how researchers can balance breadth and depth. And they do this by being really intentional about the actual role of each method. One panelist actually explained that they often use quantitative data to identify trends or patterns, and then they use qualitative data to dig into the why. So that could be, interviews or focus groups. That really stood out to me because kind of that's part of the methods that are baked into my dissertation and just kind of my research. And it helped me just understand how both qualitative and quantitative methods serve different purposes, but they work together to tell a really good, full story. They also talked about integration strategies. So I found this really helpful too. So a few panelists recommended connecting findings early, which makes a lot of sense. So not waiting until, the final discussion to try to like blend the two data sets. So which it makes sense. It was really helpful for me to kind of understand that because I think before watching this, I was kind of thinking of them as like adding to the same intention but being separate. So thinking about it as like integrating them both from the beginning really helped me. So one example was using qualitative findings to kind of highlight and explain surprising quantitative results right away, or just adjusting survey questions based on interview themes. So it could go either way depending on what you start with, but I think it makes a lot of sense to like try to make sure that you're establishing that integration from the start. Another strategy that the panelists emphasized was aligning the timing of the methods. So if you run them too far apart, or if you don't let one inform the other, the findings can feel kind of disconnected. So instead, the panelists encourage a design where the methods are working together from the jump, just kind of like what I just touched on. So the way that they put it was that the both methods are having a conversation throughout the study, which makes a lot of sense. So I think for just my own reflections after watching the videos, I think this idea of kind of keeping the methods in dialogue is it seems like really the key to handling the tension between breadth and depth. So in kinesiology example, like if just thinking of kind of an example where this could be used, if I were studying, maybe the impact of after school programs on high school students, for example, I might collect survey data on participation and maybe physical outcomes. So that kind of quantitative, like how many people are actually showing up and what benefits are they receiving from it physically. And then after I gather that data, I might do interviews to explore things like motivation, confidence, or even like social barriers, like reasons that people might not participate. Just depending on what the quantitative data produces, qualitative interviews that can help explain those findings. So one thing I would definitely take into future research is just the idea that integration isn't just a step at the end with the discussion. It actually needs to be built into the process from the start. So even if it's like loose or flexible, it needs to be planned. And that just helps ensure that, both the qualitative and quantitative pieces are actually complementing each other, and that the intention of using both is to strengthen the study, and just make it more human focused. So that was my biggest takeaway, and that's definitely kind of what I would take into future research. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. And like I said, I'll link the video that I watched in my discussion because it's kind of cool. I learned a lot, so maybe it'll be helpful. But thank you guys. I appreciate your time.